that we could have done better in terms of investor confidence, in terms of not letting the foreign investors exit our local bourse? Was there something that could have been done better in the markets, or have we, considering all the headwinds, done generally as expected?
Well, Danny, I think we did about as well as we could, considering the global meltdown in asset prices. We take a look at the benchmark equity index, that is, let's say the S&P 500 or the Nasdaq. They have had their worst years since the 2009 Great Financial Crisis. So, I largely think that these are global issues that we're facing. These are not Philippine specific, and really, I really say that we are more like collateral damage, really, in the grand scheme of things.
But Matt, any impact of PBBM's early economic policies here on the movement of the stocks?
Well, I wouldn't say so. I think what the markets care about this year in particular is easing in inflation. In my opinion, 100 days is a bit too soon for a president, for a agriculture secretary to really take into effect to see what those policies will play out like. These aren't instant solutions with instant measurable outcomes. So, I think the jury's still out on whether the Marcos administration's policies will be things that the market will appreciate.
Now, of course, in the first 100 days, one of the more major concerns, especially recently, again, the peso weakness here. How is that at least impacting the markets? And is the central bank's moves here from first saying that they're not, at least it's not a cause for concern, and then eventually intervening, is what the BSP doing in any way reassuring?
Well, I really do not envy the predicament that the BSP finds themselves in now. On the one hand, they did admit that they have been intervening in the market, although clearly the chart does not, make that obvious. So
could have been worse.
And that's the scary thing. I think most people are operating on the assumption that we blow past 60 now, and that remains to be my base case. But the weak peso makes doing business in the Philippines very difficult. We are a net importer of virtually all goods, whether that's food or energy. Basically, all of the inputs into doing business here in the Philippines are imported. And a weaker peso makes that entire process so much more costly, which at the end of the day gets passed on to the customer. So I think this is the problem that businesses are looking at now. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a straightforward solution that the BSP can do. Defending the peso by selling their reserves can only do so much. And if they overdo it and we start seeing those reserves run a little thin, that only increases the panic in the market. So it's not a straightforward solution by any means.
Okay. Matt, why is there such a discrepancy between the investment pledges that BBM has gotten 1 trillion pesos already in the first 3 months compared to the exodus of foreign investors in the local market? Why don't they come back, especially since you mentioned we've managed to, well, not necessarily be the worst in terms of inflation. The rest of, emerging market currencies are also depreciating. But apart from this, even domestically, you've got IPOs being deferred, North Star and Upson. So why the lack of investor confidence?
Well, right now, what we're seeing, at least among the public market investors, is a rush for the safe haven. And right now, it's really just cash. It's not in bonds, because bonds have equally sold off. It really is just cash. So for public investors, which I think are much different than the sort of private early stage investors that President Marcos secured with the investment commitments, I think that their motives and their time horizons are very different from those investors that you mentioned. So I do think the global market appetite has to improve for us to see the Philippines turn a corner as well.